On last week's episode, I joked about it being beers with us. This week's, it's actually beers with beauties because we have a guest. Welcome to this week's episode of Beers and Beauties.
Doesn't matter if you got Coors, Busch, Bud Light, or a local shop's IPA. All beers are welcome at Beers and Beauties, baby. Let's go.
Okay, ads. We actually filled the studio with someone who knows her shit about basketball. Michele Sung, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. We're glad you're here.
We did it.
We
got
did
a beauty.
Yeah, we got a beauty.
Okay, since I have been listening to the podcast, what is the definition of a beauty?
Well, you tell us.
No, like the sport definition
I
from
think
the hockey culture.
I think it's that's why we picked it. It's a cross sport. It doesn't matter. A beauty is, that person. You look across the locker room and whether they did something good on the ice or on the court or whatever, or in the studio, yeah, she's a beauty.
And there was one story that I had with a group of girls. I said, if you could be leading scorer, top player, or team beauty, what would you pick? And literally all of them were like, team beauty. So it's like, it's just a word that is just like a good human in sports.
Yeah.
A good human in sports that actually cares and gives a shit.
Exactly. This thing, if you want to relax, it does swing back towards you. So you don't.
It's got a fancy setup here.
I know you don't have to snuggle up to the desk.
Get cozy.
Yeah, we did. So for those of you who are just listening, Addie and I are sipping on a fine kokanee today, Addie's favorite beer.
You betcha.
And then we found out that Michele has training camp tomorrow, so she's sipping on a bubbly, which we hear now is your favorite drink, basically.
Yeah, when not drinking.
Yeah, when not drinking. There you go.
Very responsible.
What's your favorite flavor?
Probably the mango one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I had a peach one last night around the campfire, and it was delightful.
Yeah. We got a little wild when we went camping. We got the watermelon.
Ooh.
Ew, watermelon anything? It's just not good.
It's not accurate.
No,
not accurate.
Nothing actually tastes like watermelon except for watermelon.
Loved every second of it. Loved it.
Really?
Top to bottom.
Come
Top
on.
to bottom. We'll buy it every time. So good. I loved how you guys just ripped.
Yeah.
So
No one wants watermelon but you.
yeah. Good. All for me. I'll take it.
You know, it's like when you go to Costco and you buy the Gatorade pack and no one wants the yellow.
Oh yeah.
My favorite.
I'm dropping them off.
There we go.
My favorite. Lemon lime.
go.
Oh, the only one I want. Can I just have a case of?
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
that's right.
Now we know where to drop off the yellow Gatorade.
100%.
It's
Next time you
that or
come
my
in
5-year-old
studio.
nephew. So there you go.
Same taste.
Okay, so for everybody listening who doesn't know who the heck you are, who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I'm going into my 10th season.
Whoa.
9th coaching because of COVID at U of M, which is wild. University of Manitoba.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Played there before. Played a couple years overseas. We'll put those in quotations. I don't know. Like, I mean, I
10
have
years.
Yeah.
How does that feel? That's crazy.
Yeah. It's like I was thinking about it, getting ready for training camp, and in a way, it doesn't feel like 10 years. I think in the nature that I got the job, I feel like I only really started it like 3 years ago. Right. But I needed those previous 7 to get to that year 7 confidence, right? So,
Wow.
and then doing all of the stuff in the background in the summers, like national team and that sort of stuff. Those experiences wouldn't have happened if I hadn't taken the U of M job. So.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I think you sell yourself short a little bit.
I know. I've been trying to get better at the intros. It's not great, but yeah.
And we usually do like a probably better job than we did for you, but of rattling it off, and then everyone gets uncomfortable and says, it's hard to listen to my bio.
Yeah.
But then when you ask them to intro themselves, it's like, I'm going to cut off a bunch of things from my bio, and then I'm just going to wishy-washy the overseas thing.
I've just casually been a head coach for a university program for a decade, and I skedaddled overseas for a little bit, but just brought the Canada jersey that's up behind us, but
exactly.
It is hard to talk about yourself. It is hard to talk about your career, especially because I love your story in the sense of you were a Bison.
Yeah.
And then you in IGAC. Do you just sleep there?
The athletes probably think I do.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in elementary school and you're like, the teacher has a life when you see them at the grocery store. They're like, whoa. But sometimes I feel like that. But I think the pandemic one really put perspective on that. Like just driving onto campus and just having that, like the people around it and like how my role has evolved driving on like down University Crescent. And some days I wish I was just going to class and sipping coffee and doing that. But yeah, it's been really cool. And like that place will always hold a like special place in my heart. And like, yeah, we did like our wedding pictures there. We've done both of our kids' birth announcements in that gym. Like we've tried to like, I mean, not to be too corny, but yeah, like that's where I met my husband and yeah, it's pretty cool. And
Did he play basketball there too?
he played for 1 year. He played at Prov. He played basketball, volleyball at Prov and then came over redshirted a year with the men's team. Yeah.
That's awesome. So let's go back a little bit to your playing. So what
Feels like so
I was
long
gonna
ago.
say when people ask me about playing, I'm like, what?
was
There's
that?
no way. And we always joke about like the trunk of like the trophies that your parents have hidden in the closet.
It's in the Harry Potter closet.
Yeah, you for sure have it too. It's like in
I'm like dreading the
everybody's-
day where my parents finally move out of my childhood house and they're like, here, we have all this stuff.
Oh,
And
my
I'm like,
parents didn't have to move out, my friend. They just said, Alicia, here is the tote of your crap.
Yeah.
Take it with you.
Well, that day for me was Saturday.
oh no.
Oh no!
I showed up at
Penny
my
and Tim.
parents' place. Penn was
Just saying.
said, Addie,
It's time.
it's time. It was at the door waiting for me. This tote of like all my hockey stuff, and she's like, I don't know what you want to do with this, but here you go.
Here's what I'll tell you
okay.
not to try to do. So I thought I was being a very nice human. I thought, these are great trophies. They're still shiny, new, nice things. I tried to drop them off at a few community centers and be like, just take the plate off and like put a new one. Nope.
Really?
Won't even take them.
What?
Won't
Because
take
that
'em.
is that's a good thing.
Well, I just thought at least someone would use it.
Right.
Like they've sat under my stairs for.
I feel like there's like a company in Winnipeg that actually
Really?
use them. Yeah. I feel like we were talking about it at the last high school tournament we did.
Oh, because they're
Yeah.
like those
We'll have to
nice,
look
you know,
into
those
that.
like pewter ones, like the nice hockey player pewter.
Yeah. Well, and they don't make
Yeah.
trophies like
So
they used
why
to.
wouldn't they
Yeah.
Oh,
take
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And don't make them like they used to
Oh, no.
anymore.
How old
no
did that
chance.
sound? I'm okay with that.
That's the best because I agree with you 100%.
You're like,
A
oh,
solid bronze trophy, and it's like for A2 hockey players. Like,
can we just to pull the basketball context into this, like Kelsey Plum's MVP trophy at the All-Star game? Come on, how many memes are you waiting for? Like it was like this big.
We talked about it.
texted about it. She's
We're
like,
like, why does she have to? She has to hold it with two fingers on each side. It is.
It probably was plastic too. If she dropped it, it would have been fine. Just pick it up.
that's right. It had the rings on the side, and she was holding it with her pinky.
right.
That
Like
was
she's not like that big of an athlete. Like it shouldn't have looked that small.
Oh, it was.
Oh my god.
Remember we said
And
it
the
looks like
commish,
she's going to a
like,
tea party.
That's right. The commish like handing it over, like that was totally wild. That's so right. But to to go back to my original question before the old school trophies got in the way.
Yeah.
From your playing career, like what kind of player were you? And do you feel like there's anything that you've taken from your playing career that you always kind of look back on now as you're coaching? Deep, hey?
Probably lots,
Deep.
but it's hard on the spot.
Yeah, I think I had an unconventional path to get to university. So I think that probably is what I go back to a little bit more. Just had a variety of coaches. I grew up in like the hotbed of girls basketball. Like Hamilton, Ontario is like, I can't wait to the day there's a documentary about it because it's crazy the basketball quality there. But yeah, so I think that I draw on that a lot, just in the sense of guiding athletes through like roles and how every role is important. And basketball's tough, right? There's 5 people on a floor, 12 people on a team. Like you're not going to play a lot sometimes. And if you can't wrap your head around that you still have value, if you're not one of those 5 main players, it's a tough go, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's hard to get perspective on why you're still doing it, especially at our level when it's day in, day out, and it's a lot of time and energy and emotion. So yeah, I think that's probably the one thing. When I played, I was really fortunate when I came to U of M. I think they were 3rd ranked in Canada West, and I was playing behind like an all-Canadian Canada West All-Star. I knew that my only job was really just to facilitate and be with them and support them. And I think that was something that I was really excited about because I had done that in my grassroots development pathway. And then, so now coaching athletes through that is it's hard, it's challenging, but it's probably the one thing that I'm really grateful for now that I went through as a player so that I could relate to almost everybody on our roster.
Yeah, and to think of the complex, because when you grow up in grassroots, like I know a lot of it is always like, you know, there's still a lot of parent involvement, points, you know, all those types of conversations, and then it's like the quick jump to university where then it's like, what role do you actually play here? And understanding that each role is valuable,
Yeah.
regardless of what it is, right? Like we're even watching WNBA playoffs right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's key players that stand out, obviously, but there's 5 women out there, you know, like understanding your role and how you participate on a team is truly what I think gets you to that next level and embracing it, right?
Well, I think about like how many of these WNBA players were not big stars in college, or they were household names for the really avid fan. I think it's a little bit different now, but this is still the back end of that talent. Like the average age for probably the playoffs is 32. Like peak basketball peak age is 32, 35, which is like a long ways away from like youth sport and university, and there's a lot in between, right? So it's like, what are the qualities that get people to that level is really interesting.
Can you repeat that one more time? The peak, because
I was just going to talk about, we've talked about the retirements, right? And we're like, man, to be in the league for that long and to be that impactful still at that age. But then when you say peak age is 32 to 35.
So it's because it's, well, this is like the science-y of this being in a university, but open skill sport, late developing sport. It's one of those ones where like I could still go out and play with our university athletes for a game and be fine. Playing multiple games over multiple weeks would not happen just because I haven't trained, obviously. But yeah, like the amount of decision-making that goes into it makes it, you just get better with time. And players that figure it out can have a pretty long, steady career. And you're seeing that now, right? Which is pretty cool. The league's really good.
Yeah.
Like, add teams, please.
add teams, please.
Add teams, please.
But I think that's a really cool conversation across all sports, because we're seeing that a lot with golf, with women, you know, being older within the league. But there is still this conversation of like, you know, it's university, then it's over.
Yeah.
When really, in reality, it's kind of like, it's just the beginning, because you're just starting to get into those high performance conversations.
Yeah. It's tough too in Canada, right? Because especially in our sport, that's it. That's where it stops for most of them. So if you're a parent trying to navigate that, you're like, well, I got to put all of my time and energy into like the 10 to 16 age range. And you're like, in Europe, they're like, okay, we're going to go have a 4-month summer at the beach house because you have 15 years left of basketball, right? And even on the girl side, it's been consistent. I don't think the financial compensation is there, but it's really well supported. It's something that is a job and it's well respected. So it's interesting how, like, I think I first kind of got onto this and was wrapping my head around it when we were at like Worlds with a 16U team, and you're like, okay, how many of the girls from our Canada team are going to play on our senior team? And you're like, maybe none, which is wild.
Wow.
Because there's so much development that happens from then until
that's crazy.
And you back end all of the talent, right? So, you know, we had 3 or 4 really long time vets that retired this past Olympic cycle. But you think about all of the players that they not knocked out, but because they were able to maintain and up their level of play every year, that younger generation, that player didn't make the roster. So you're like, oh, okay, yeah. And like, other than US, they're an outlier. Like Spain's historically really good. You're like, oh, their average roster age at the Olympics is like 35, whereas Canada's is like 23. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a bit different. Yeah. Like we had an NCAA athlete, right, in our Olympic roster this year, which is wild.
That is absolutely wild. So is that a conversation though for youth sport athletes to go over to Europe after? Like, is it a conversation? Like, because I know there are some girls in hockey that, you know, do decide to go to Europe after and stuff like that. Yeah. Is that conversation there in basketball?
I have it. I don't know if I have it just because I know people that have done it. I had a little dabble doing it, but it's way more of a conversation now than it ever has been. I think there's also educational opportunities that you can kind of continue. So there's a really great league in the UK that you can go and do a 1-year master's. You get a pro contract. It gives you a year to get stats. Now you can maybe go on to one of the other countries. Germany also has 2 full leagues in women's side. So you can be an average youth sport player and still get a contract there. It's just all about who you talk to, your timing, your training. Yeah.
We got to do that. Yeah. We got to have that conversation a lot more, because I would assume that a lot of people don't know that. Oh, yeah. Would be my assumption, right?
I think when we've had it too, some parents, maybe just people's support groups are like, well, you're putting your life on hold. And I just think about all of the growth that happened in my 1 year of like living in a foreign country by myself in like an apartment, couldn't speak the language. Like I wouldn't trade that. Did I lose a year of school? Maybe. But it's one of those like, you know, people that do homeschooling or like that
I
stuff.
also think this life on hold conversation just needs to die.
I know. But it's
like, how many of us are sitting here in our early 30s, mid 30s and saying like, oh man, sure wish I would have started adulting 2 years sooner.
Exactly. I know. And
it's so true. Like, it's so valid. It's so valid.
All of like the COVID seniors or the pandemic seniors, right? Like I have a group on my team right now. They're 3rd year eligibility, but they all graduate this year. And you know, so half of them are like, what am I going to do? And you're like, you don't have to know.
Yeah, no,
like,
we still don't know.
We still don't know what's going on over here.
That needs to die. Because I remember feeling that pressure. We've talked about that on the podcast, where that was my feeling as an athlete. Was like, well, got a degree, time to go be an adult. Let's go get a real job and move home and whatever.
Yeah. So where did you play?
In Serbia.
Serbia.
Yeah.
Whoa. And you didn't know the language?
No,
you didn't know. Wow.
Again, it was like just a weird timing. I was doing my engineering degree. I wanted to do a co-op and got connected with a US company that was doing work in Serbia. Once I kind of got that set up, I just contacted a bunch of coaches and just got connected with the club. Ended up doing more coaching than playing when I was there with their youth programs, which was in hindsight great.
That's really cool too.
Yeah, but it was great. It was a good experience.
Isn't that funny? That's not unique to basketball, that it's the athlete going and be like, oh, I just, threw my name out to a few email addresses and saw what came back.
To be honest with you, I see some of the youth sport athletes that graduated that now got pro contracts, and they're not like all-stars.
Yeah.
And they just put in the time. They put in a little bit of effort to make sure they have some connections and stayed with some training. And yeah.
It's crazy because we do talk about that. We have talked about that a lot in past of this conversation of, pursuing your dreams, but people seem to put the realistic aspect on women a lot more instead of having that same conversation, because now you look at the PHF that's signing girls out of college and, and they're not making little money. Like if you're a first year person coming out of university, it's not like you're walking into a $200,000 job.
What would be the average salary?
I think the average salary was between
55
for 8 months work.
Yeah.
Like you think about your first entry level job, lots of people start there anyways.
Yep. Totally. So, and I just feel like that conversation is so important for parents to hear of, like, it's not, you're walking into a pro contract.
Well, because the term viable, right? It's like, it's not a viable option. It's like, no, it is a viable option. Is it a long-term viable option? Yeah, maybe not.
Right.
But also and we're talking specifically, this is a hockey conversation in this one, but it is the least established professional leagues if we're looking at golf, basketball, soccer, all of these other things.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
you play there for a few years and who knows what's going to happen, or we see the amalgamation of two things anyways.
Well, and then even in the LPGA, like that Lucy Liu who just got onto the tour there or whatever.
I know, right? I don't think it's not Lucy Liu.
I
Isn't that
don't
an
know.
actress,
Yeah,
like
Lucy-
a kung fu actress or
Yeah,
whatever?
I think it's her name is for sure Lucy Lui.
Maybe it is Lucy Liu. Gen 2 Lucy Liu.
Come on.
right.
Will fact check me. But anyway, Lucy's a beauty and she's on the tour. She's grinded and she's making money. Like
Yeah.
she's not going onto the tour to not make money.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, and we talked a lot about this in tennis too. Like women are making really good money in the sport now. And then you'll definitely know more about this than us, but with the women that play in the WNBA, so there's been a lot of talk obviously about them going overseas.
season,
Playing a double season. So that's obviously a lot for financial reasons. Would you say that it's primarily financial reasons, or is it like to just keep up your skills and keep playing?
I would say it's probably a bit of both. Like you look at the rookie of the year this year, right? She was 30-year-old rookie. She had played 10 years overseas. It was her first year in the league, and
Gardner,
yeah,
Chicago Sky.
yeah. Coincidentally, your favorite
Oh my
team.
gosh. Isn't that weird? The recruitment there is just through the roof.
So like for her, like her dream was to get, and her goal was to get the WNBA. So she used the overseas option to stay in the game at a competitive level that would allow her to do that. The top stars, I personally, I have no facts to add to any of this, but when Diana Taurasi decided not to play that one season in the WNBA because she was getting paid $1 million plus in Russia, I think that changed the conversation. Because it was like, hey, I don't actually have to play both seasons.
Yeah.
So I'm going to choose the one that's going to give me the
That's
most money.
actually lucrative. Yeah. So we talked about that kind of, you mentioned like expand the league, because we had the incredible to watch WNBA draft that happened this year. And you saw like all the talent that you were in Minneapolis for the Final Four. And all this talent. And then we were like, there's no room.
Yes.
There's no room in the WNBA for any of these people.
You could be the best player in college and get drafted to a team that just doesn't need you in terms of personnel or style of play, and you could be done after training camp.
So are all these overseas programs, like, are they adding teams? Are they just continuing to expand to fill this like gap?
I think they've always had teams. Like I think just like the quality of like the Division II league in Spain now is
way superior to what it was.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think too, just with social media and word getting out, I think those leagues are now being populated with more and more imports too.
Yeah.
So
fair.
yeah, and there's more desired places to go. Like you think about, okay, do you want to take an entry level contract in like Siberia or in Greece?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
some people would choose either or, right? Like, oh, so you're telling me I'm playing a little bit lower basketball, but I'm living in Greece? I mean, I guess.
Yeah, no, it definitely
Right?
comes into play for sure.
Yeah.
Would you have taken Ryan Howard first overall?
No, I was okay with it.
You were okay with
Yeah.
it?
Well, Addie was very okay with it.
Oh yeah, no, she was unreal. I was just wondering. I was wondering because we watched it super intensely, and I was fangirling pretty hard over Destiny Henderson.
Yeah.
Pretty hard is an understatement.
I talked about it for like 2 weeks straight. I'm like, she's going top 6. Like, there's
like,
no chance. And then it was like, I was
texting
just
me, and I'm like, dude, I think you're slightly off on your top
slightly
6.
off.
Okay,
She's
well,
so
you
good, though.
can compare it to hockey. So I feel like the WNBA might be one of the few leagues where you see draft picks. Almost the draft order is all based on need by each team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Necessity.
Like, is it like that in hockey?
Less so.
Less so. It's just like you're the best person in your class.
Well, because you think it's not like you have, like, we run through, if it was a hockey scenario, you run through 3-point guards, you play for 30 seconds and you change.
So you need 3 solid.
So you need 3 centers, you need 3 left wingers, you need 3.
Sometimes you'll see like a pick and you're like, oh, it's because they actually didn't need anybody.
Yeah, there was one. Remember?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not even going to try and pretend, but there was one that we were like, how did this even... Like,
Lexi Hall.
No, that wasn't it.
Lexi Hall. Even though I did really like Lexi Hall. She was pretty unreal. And she wasn't projected anywhere by any of the analysts. And then it was like,
No, that was
Huge.
definitely. That
You're
was
the
not name.
broadcaster scrabbling with their note papers. Like, who is this? Luckily, she went to Stanford, so you're good.
Well, and that was
TV coverage was there.
was the whole part with the draft too, because they only had certain people there, right? Obviously, they had like their projected top 12 or whatever they were, and then that was not the name because we actually knew Lexi Hall. It was a name that you and I were like, sorry,
Maya Holling
Shield or something.
Hollingshed.
That's right.
Hollingshed went to Vegas. And then literally in the video, they looked over at Becky Hammond and went, "Becky, you got your girl." And everyone's like, "Who's your girl, Becky?" Becky, where are you looking, girl?
But then they got rid of her.
Sorry,
Remember?
the mic isn't working. I can't hear.
And and then now she's gone.
Yeah. Then
Now she's gone.
she like
And
took
Kristen
her. And
Bell
then
went to Vegas.
see ya.
and- yeah.
Yeah.
Super strange.
What's your thought on Becky Hammond and her introduction into the league and her just beauty status?
Coach of the year. I was like, oh, I mean, you follow it pretty closely. I think I really like her coaching style, just gender in the NBA side. But you just the media that was generated around her being the NBA. And then when she didn't get any of the head coaching jobs in the NBA, you're like, and then you see that she's like, gets to Vegas and you're like, yes, she's in our game.
Yes,
and you're
that's
like,
right.
so yeah, I think that was good. The WNBA coaching world is the same as the playing world. It is so top quality because there's only
12 teams.
Yeah. And I mean, depending on how organizations want to distribute their coaches, like some of them will have just coaching jobs and go to a different team. Some of them will have a coaching job and an office job. So it can be pretty cutthroat. So you're like, oh man, if you don't get in, or if you don't do well, will you get back in?
Well, and we really liked the stage that she set from let's just continue to grow the sport, right? And so this standard of GM, head coach with a salary that was far surpassed anyone else.
Yeah.
And I think she took a lot of shit for that in a way. And
But
it's like,
every coach next year will be thanking
that's
her.
exactly right.
That's right.
Like my reference always, and this goes back to the NHL, was hockey. Mike Babcock took this, huge deal when he went to Toronto. Everyone was livid about it. And then what happens next year? Every other coach who's renewing has a stage set because of them.
That's exactly right. And I just think that she is so boss because like not only does she
is.
Okay, side note on the bossness, the suit jacket with the hoodie underneath. What? Where does that? Is that business?
We're coming to a Bison game. You're gonna rock
Tell
that.
me where I can get it. We were joking around as a staff. We're like, where do we get this?
honestly.
You need a
Like,
tailor.
is that business casual? Is that?
Is now. When you walk in the way she walks in, she could be in her freaking pajamas, and they're like, "Yep,
That's
Becky
like
Hammond."
that's like Dawn Staley. Like
Oh,
you're
I know,
like,
right?
any other coach wore what she wore, and you're like, they would look. She just walks in like,
Just
you don't
owns it.
know who I am. Like, great,
That was
yeah, we
one
should
of
all know who you are.
That was one of the best things was when they were talking to her about her sty. And that's one thing I will give the WNBA. They embrace sty culture like nobody's business.
Well,
all the women walking in like
I was going to ask about that
sick.
being if that's a basketball, because it seems like a very inclusive culture in general. Would you say that's like a basketball culture, or is that really just on highlight fostered through the WNBA?
I want to say it's WNBA. Like they're just such a I feel any sport like researcher from any area would argue that they are probably the leader from like the 70s for advocacy, inclusivity, and just like being okay to speak their mind and stand up for stuff. So I think, and I think was it the bubble?
Yeah.
Like that, I think just put it back on everybody else to accept it.
Well, you think about their pressers are more bold than any other sport.
Yeah.
They, like, you're right. They don't give a shit who you are, what you look like, where you're from, none of it, what you wear. Like, it is the most inclusive culture.
And you think about the landscape that they're in. Like, I'm not going to get into politics, but being in the U.S., like, it would be challenging. And the fact that they're so, like, strong in their convictions of what they stand for as a league and, like, their players' association, you're like, if every sport took just that strong of a stance on one thing, how much all sports, their athletes would be leaders in the community. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, and that's not gender specific. That's just across the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So valid.
Yeah.
But that was like with with throughout the Frozen Four or whatever there when they were in Minneapolis and they asked Dawn Staley like what like inspires, and she's like, my coach, you know, like I just like to look rich.
Yeah.
And I'm like, get it, girl.
Yeah. Like what other basketball coach? She's sponsored by Gucci.
Yeah.
Like what other sport coach is sponsored by Gucci?
she
like how
rocks the,
boss is that?
yeah.
You're like, she has
Jackets,
custom
hoodies,
stuff.
shoes, doesn't matter.
No,
And the
it's
one
awesome.
thing too, to go back to what you were saying about coaching and roles and stuff like that, it was for me being a coach when they won the national championship and her acceptance speech was naming all the girls that didn't get to play. I was like, you're our leader, captain, my captain. Holy moly!
For all
what
coaches,
an incredible! I couldn't. She had the world watching her. And she didn't go to Boston. You know, she looked at those girls that grinded all year, and I was like, what a powerful message! What athlete wouldn't die to play for a coach like that?
Oh yeah.
Use your stage. We talk about that lots, right?
Yeah.
And like when you have one, use it.
Oh yeah.
And she does
she's
every
done.
opportunity she can, which is so fun to watch.
Yeah.
So from your coaching, so when we're even getting into like recruiting, so you mentioned that, you know, basketball in Winnipeg is thriving right now.
It's expanding.
It's expanding. Are there qualities you look for? Are there certain things that you look for as a coach? And do you watch players a certain amount of times? Like, what's your recruiting to get to the university level at U of M?
Talk about the 10-year journey. This is it personified. I think that you try not. So I come from Ontario, right? In Ontario, they get so much exposure. I can watch one game from a grade 11 athlete and know exactly who they're going to be in university. Whereas I find here you have to go and see a couple games and you really have to think about where they're going to fit into your system, how they're going to fit your culture. I don't know. It's been a journey for me on that one. Trying not to do the comparison game all the time.
For sure.
End of the day, though, we still need to compete for national championships, right? So I was like, die hard. I want to win with local talent. And I think that that is still what I want to do, but I can't put all of the eggs into that basket every year. It's got to be ebbs and flows with it, especially being a small population province, being a small population sport. Like we're pretty low on participation in our sport for team sport for girls. So just making sure that I don't get blinders to that.
Yeah.
Because there's some years where I would love to have 5 from Manitoba, but we just don't have the depth of quality there, or the top 5 don't match what we need, right? So
absolutely. And we talk a lot about this in the sense too of like the word compete, I think is super important in this context, because at the end of the day, you want a national championship. You want to win.
Yeah.
And the quicker we can get it into girls' heads at a really young age of embracing this word compete and being competitive. And if you want to be competitive when you get to coaching or when you get to a high level, you don't care where that person's from.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
You want to compete and you want to be the one that's there pushing the pace, and you want that championship with you. So it's interesting because I hold hockey in Manitoba near and dear to my heart too. And at the end of the day, though, you do have to think like we want to win, and we want to teach girls that winning is good.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard in this province because like you say, it's a small population province, and every kid who loves basketball and wants to do it wants to play. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And not unlike for hockey, right? It's like
I think
you want to go play and be a Bison.
Grassroots too, sports in general, but maybe I'm just speaking from my lens. We don't also do a great job of selling all of the other pieces of sport. So then they all think the only option is to go to university.
That's right.
And you're like, I'm not trying to kill dreams here. Yeah. I'm just like, so I feel like at the grassroots level, if we sell, like, there's still great opportunities in reffing. There's great opportunities in administration. There's great opportunities in coaching.
We've talked about this,
Like, think about how many other girls, it doesn't mean that it devalues your high school experience or that maybe now you
Totally.
like love it more because you know like this is the highest level it'll play. But if I really embrace myself or immerse myself, then I'm going to be a really good ref.
I
right?
use the
Like-
example of, you know how when you're growing up they made you go to a career fair
Yeah.
and you were like, this sucks. I don't know what I want to be.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if your career fair was like all the things you could have done in sports?
Yeah.
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 We need
talk
like
about
a
that.
sport career fair.
that's
And
right.
I gave the example like really early on one of the podcasts. The NFL does a really good job of they have this women's combine, and that's what it's about. Is they bring in all of these women in football,
Yeah.
and I can't remember the numbers statistically that they had, but it was a crazy percentage of the people that went through this combine with them ended up in either, front office, NFL, or on the sidelines, on a bench, whatever these things are.
cool.
All this different stuff where they're like, hey, you love this sport, you want to be involved in it?
Here's ways to
Here's
do
the
it.
avenue. And it's
really
not
cool.
this, it's like this wide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
That's
need to
super
do that
neat.
at a grassroots level.
Yeah.
Yeah, we couldn't agree more. And we like, because even from the perspective of you could be totally immersed in the sport. Like we were like university athletes, you're totally immersed in your sport. And never once did somebody talk to me about being like a skills coach.
A coach and anything.
And
Nothing.
a coach you're right. Like, and it's fascinating that those conversations aren't like more and more prevalent in the daily conversation. Like I had an athlete go, well, it's either D1 or nothing. And I was like, you're going to have a seat with me right here. You're not leaving the building until we have at least 30 minutes of solid conversation about why what you said is wrong.
And you don't want to like say that that's not the goal, because I think a lot of great things could come out of that
Totally.
being the goal. But it's like, it's trying to dig into like, where did that come from? Is it literally one person in your support group telling you that? Or have you truly looked at it from A, B, C, D? You know that you do those things to make it to that level where it's like, oh,
Yeah, exactly. And I also
Yeah.
think that we're like starting to see people think that if you didn't play the sport, like I didn't start hockey till I was 11.
Mm-hmm.
And people then would have been like, oh, you didn't start when you were 4. So you're, and I think we're starting to see this more and more in sports where it's like, oh, if you can't start my kid at 8 because Johnny or Jill started when they were 5. It's like, no, if you fall in love with the game, you can start it when you're, I don't care, 14, 15. It's not about that.
the last Olympics there where they did they showed the results of the RBC training grounds.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, there's 3 or 4 medalists that had only picked up their sports within that quadrennial. You're like, whoa.
Yeah, we just
multi-sport athletes are still like the desired outcome at the highest level of a lot of sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the idea that like, you need like, and I not to, it's not that any avenue is worse than anything else, but we're starting to lose the mentality that if you're good enough, you'll get there. Where you have to pursue something instead of just playing and loving and being the best that you can be and knowing that that's enough to find a path.
Yeah.
That we need to spend oodles of money and
It's also tough. I feel like this, to make myself sound old, this generation, they're also like, they're sitting on their phones and they just get stuff thrown in their face that they're almost stuck in the comparison world all the time. And there's no ability to get out of it and just say, I know I do this well. I know that this is my dream and I'm going to try to get there. Right.
yeah.
Oh, like I honestly, how much is social media management being a coach? It's become a massive part of the whole piece of it because you can get people saying stuff in other places and you got people texting in the dressing room and we went through that and it's crazy.
Yeah.
It is a crazy world out there.
Yes.
It's and too much misinformation. That's the part that makes me mad. If you're going to put stuff out there, at least be factual.
Yeah.
At
Like
least-
misleading or like it makes it seem like something that it's not.
Skewed,
Yeah.
That's totally. So who do you think's going to win it this year in the WNBA?
My heart says the Aces. My logic says Chicago.
Oh, good thing logic is very logical.
Well, then I'm taking the Aces.
Yeah, I knew it. Who did I take? I
Every
obviously
time
took.
Addie takes someone, I'm like, well,
Opposite.
taking the other one.
You took Louisville to win in the women's bracket, and I obviously took South Carolina.
No, let's be
took the
correct.
easy road.
Let's be correct. You took South Carolina, and then I said, I guess I'm taking Louisville.
Yeah.
That makes. I was like, that makes more sense. Who picked Louisville?
And it was the same with hockey for the Frozen Four. Addie named it, and then I was like, well I guess
Like,
we take
I'm
the
the
other.
other one. Which was so cool for Ohio State to win this year.
Yeah.
It was so cool. And do have a cool story. So the Ohio State goalie was training on the rink beside us, and I kind of went over and just said, hey, do you want to come over and say a little something to the girls? And she went and just whole
Fired
spiel
them
was like, you put your heart and soul into this. Like, look at us.
You were ready
We're
to
at
put the
rink."
skates on or what?
I was like, let's go. I'm like sitting on one knee looking up like, let's do this.
That's so cool.
She was so great, but you could tell after winning that championship, like that there's no way that she's done after her university. Like
No.
she,
Got the bug.
oh, it was so cool. It was so cool. So Chicago, we got that on record. We got that on record.
No, I'm gonna say the Aces just because
Oh
I
my
want it
God,
to be
2
switched up.
1,
Yeah.
2-1.
Well, beers
don't
are
like
on
to see
you
a
when
little
Chicago
back-to-back?
loses.
There's a part of me, obviously, I'm a Chicago's guy all the way.
The one thing that scares me about Chicago is that they've won so many close games this year, or have had weird comeback games. You're like down 15, and you're
They were down 16 in this game, and
which
now
is
they're
deadly in
down
the
1.
playoffs and in the short series that the WNBA playoffs.
Okay. I want to talk to you about this because I asked Addie this.
Yes.
Why is that? So this was my joke because there's a lot of things that have come up that women have ovaries and it's probably too hard.
Good guess. Glad we got to that logic.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just gonna throw
We're
that
just
out
gonna
in the room.
loop this back around
Because
here
the
for ya.
NBA, all of the rounds are a best of 7 series. The WNBA, it's a 3-5-5.
It's like tennis.
Why? What is this?
And then we're like,
What's
well,
the logic they use for tennis?
must be something to do with their ovaries.
Every excuse is that they have
ovaries can't handle
ovaries,
it.
so it must need to.
It works with the cycle, you know.
I don't
Because
know.
it is interesting, like you do mention it was tennis because it's the
Yeah.
best of 3. I find women's tennis so, and I watch men's tennis, I watch all tennis, but I find it so much better because they have to be so much more competitive in a short period of time.
Yeah.
Where men can like take, a little bit longer to get into it, and then you're into like a 4-hour match.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy man, like
But are
let's
you
wrap
are
it
you-
up, Andy Murray.
Are you telling me that you wouldn't have wanted to watch more basketball in the first round?
Totally. 100%. But this
Best of
is
3
games.
is silly to
That's-
me.
Yeah.
It is silly.
It is, but then you're like, well, the ratio of teams, like
I guess.
in the past, that 1 to 8
yeah,
matchup
you're talking
is a
top
bit,
to bottom.
Yeah. It's like, okay, yeah, they probably only need 3 games to figure it out. But not anymore. Like the league is so
Well, we saw 2-2-1
competitive. Yeah. Like
2-1
New York
City.
upset
Yeah.
Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So we didn't. It's not like we saw 4 sweeps.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I don't know. I just feel like it's like
well, we also know that their travel accommodations are not the greatest.
That's
so
honestly, that's probably a
shortening
contributor.
shortening the
for sure.
series is probably like the athletes probably hate it on one regard, but on the other hand, they're like, well, you know what? If we're gonna win, we got to win now.
yeah. That's
What a message for the liberty to get chartered flights last year, be treated like athletes and get in trouble. I couldn't believe it. We were so mad. We talked about it for so long. We were so mad because it's like, are you kidding?
yeah.
Are you kidding? It should be like the salary thing. It should be like, well, New York can come up with planes. What are you going to do? Like,
Yeah,
it
seriously.
should be the other way around,
Well,
not.
I don't know if you saw the documentary with Chelsea Gray when she was switching over. So she originally was, I don't know what the word is in sports or in pro sports. It's not you're recruited, but when you're a free agent and teams bring you in on like a recruiting
Yeah,
visit.
okay.
So she talked like a big thing about going to Las Vegas was their travel is all like it's chartered and it's a little bit more comfortable. Whereas in LA it was not. Like she's like, yeah, I'm sitting on middle seats in commercial flights and they're asking me what I do for a living. And you're like, that would be so wild.
That
Can you
would
imagine
be
sitting down on a
wild.
flight, be like,
We said that. We said they must have all the aisle seats and it's just legs everywhere because they're all tall. Well, the majority of them are quite tall.
and the reason why Vegas has good travel accommodations is because Bill Laimbeer was an NBA player and he's like, I'm not making them
Yeah.
travel like I wouldn't have traveled. And you're like,
right.
yeah. So
Wild. So that contributed.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
So Cowie and I did this when we were talking about the WNBA because there is a lot of talk about expanding franchises. So where
Toronto. Instantly. It has to be.
Yeah.
It would be a sellout game. Every game would be a sellout.
It would be a sellout game. But but now do you have the opposite conversation that Chelsea Gray goes to Vegas?
Yep.
And it's like, accommodations are paid for, it's bougie. Like, is it gonna be a hard time to get players to come to Toronto?
Where's Drake?
Yeah, okay.
Come on, Drake.
Well, Natalie Achonwa called him out on this, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, you talked about supporting women's basketball. You go to all these NCAA. You go play one-on-one with Shy down at Duke. Like, put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah,
I love it. I
Big fan
love,
of that.
yes. Yeah, Nats is great for that. But yeah, she, I think with people like her and how passionate the WNBA players from Canada are,
Yeah.
and they're vocal,
Yeah.
I think it would be great.
Okay,
I
so
think it would be
cool.
great. Especially, is it Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment?
Yeah.
Right? They own like all the pro,
Yeah.
what's another team to them? Right?
And you're right, it would be sold
Yes.
out.
And it's a complimentary season, right? It's not like competing.
That's right.
Yep. I've already got the business plan.
Okay, what's the
I'm a big
second
fan.
one? What's the second place? They're gonna add two teams in a season.
I don't even know. This is where you're like, okay, the geography, the cost of travel. Teams in Texas did not work out, right? Dallas.
San Antonio or whatever didn't work out.
That's now Vegas, right?
Yep.
Would another California team just make sense? I don't know.
Addie wants to go to Denver.
Oh, okay.
I want to go watch some basketball in the
OKC might
mountains.
be a really good one. I've heard their OKC Thunder is what the Winnipeg Jets are to the NHL. I've heard that comparison.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's big.
Like in terms of small town feel,
Yeah.
like, but the arenas, it's very well supported. Yeah.
No kidding.
I have nothing
Look at
else,
this.
but
Well, we don't have a lot of facts. Don't worry. We're not facts.
other than
but-
Toronto, like
just-
Toronto has to happen.
I was just going to say, I love when I ask a question and it's answered immediately because
Toronto.
we agree with you. Toronto would be lights out.
I think the one thing that players have an issue with is the taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your taxes.
maybe they want a
You
team
make
in
less
Florida.
Money. Yeah, you make less money if you come here, right? So.
Yeah.
Of course.
But Drake's got lots of money. He'll
There
support
you
it.
go. Just supplement the taxes.
That's right.
If you go to
That's a good
Alberta,
idea.
This is
you
going to
don't
go
have to pay
viral just because
PST.
we're going to call it Drake so much.
Where's
Drake,
Drake?
where are you at?
Call the episode, Where's Drake? Where's Drake? It was cool for obviously we're super happy that you came here and chatted with us and had a good time. But to talk about basketball like this is so exciting.
Well, it's refreshing
what I
for us
mean?
because
And
I feel like we do an okay job, but
To have
You guys do a great job.
do we?
head coach
there's not-
of a
there's-
university team here with us.
It's nice to have a spin on it where it's like a conversation you'd have with, in your basement watching the game, as opposed to, I think the women's focused podcasts that I listen to or shows or like YouTubes, it's all like internal people. So like it's like stats, analytics, coaching, or like players' perspective. So it's nice just to
Shoot the shit a little bit.
Shoot the shit a little bit.
Very cool.
So you must be excited about training camp tomorrow morning.
it should be
going.
good. Yeah.
That's awesome.
No more 6 a.m.ers. I'm over that.
Yeah.
Have 2 kids and you'll be like, yeah, I'm done.
That's right.
When season start up?
Regular season starts November. We have exhibition all of October.
No kidding.
So let's help people find how to watch the game.
Isn't that what you guys are on the
Oh yeah.
doing?
Yeah. Maybe we should. We're gonna have to make our way to IGAC a few times for
yeah.
sure, and we'll have to have some of those
100%.
players on the pod.
I do have to give a plug to our media team though, like Canada West in particular, but also at U of M. Like our games are awesome. If you do watch them online, they're great.
Amazing.
They're super knowledgeable. They put a lot of time and effort into it, and I think our league too has gotten really good. Yeah,
Good.
So.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So season tickets, do people just call in to gobisons.ca and get tickets? And
Yeah, I think they just have like a season pass for all sports now, and watch as much Bison sports as you want, and you can do single game walk-ups. Everything's online. Yeah,
that is awesome.
no more COVID rules, so it's awesome.
So everyone's just full tilty the whole time.
Addie and I are gonna show up and make signs for the coach.
Great.
That's right.
Wouldn't be the
gonna
worst
get
for Halloween, my
custom made blazer hoodie combos.
Please,
Blazer hoodie combos. You haven't heard. I sound probably like I can't get loud. I can get loud.
Oh, yeah.
Ask Addie's wife. I'm talking about at hockey.
Okay.
I'm talking about in hockey. You had bad influences at your wedding you attended last night, I think.
What is happening? Oh, my
Remember
God.
I used to yell in the stands
Oh,
and she
yes.
hated it
Yep.
so badly.
Did you play at university?
Yeah, in Wisconsin.
In Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wisconsin. That's right. Well, like, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you for coming
having
on.
me.
Thanks for coming. And honestly, just want to say how much we appreciate you continuing on with your career, stepping up, being an unreal coach for those girls. Thank you so much. It's awesome. And we cannot wait to come and heckle this
I'm
year.
excited.
Heckle this
We will
year.
be there.
Perfect. Thanks
So,
so much for having me.
in Beauties fashion, Cowie, final words.
Well, the final words on this one, yeah, big thank you to you. You're our first guest that we've invited to my basement, or our basement if my wife is listening. So we appreciate you making the drive over here, getting away from kid bedtime.
this
But good luck tomorrow. And yeah, like we said, thanks for being here so much. Ads, thanks for another good one. It was
Love
fun,
it.
buddy. We'll see you
Love it.
soon.
Go Bisons.
Woo.
Right on.